You are watching a video where Jimin from BTS reportedly stopped mid-concert, mid-song, in front of tens of thousands of people because he saw one single sign held up by one single fan. And what he reportedly did in the next 30 seconds is the kind of moment that stadium tours are actually made for. If you have ever wondered why people say Jimin is one of the most emotionally present performers in the world right now, stick around, because this story might explain it better than anything else that has come out of his tour so far. And if you are new here, welcome. This channel breaks down exactly these kinds of BTS and Jimin moments for people who are not deep in the fandom yet, but want to understand what all the noise is about. So if that sounds like you, go ahead and hit subscribe before we get into this, because there is a lot more where this came from. Let's set the scene first, because if you are not familiar with what is happening right now, BTS is currently in the middle of the biggest tour of their career. It is called the ARIRANG World Tour, named after their 2026 comeback album ARIRANG, which dropped after the members finished their mandatory military service in South Korea. This is not a small reunion tour. We are talking about more than 80 shows across more than 20 countries and stadiums that hold anywhere from 50 to 70,000 people a night. Tickets sold out in hours across South Korea, Europe, and North America. This is the first time in years these 7 men have been back on a stage together at this scale, and every single stop on this tour has been generating these viral, personal, almost unbelievable moments between the members and the fans in the crowd. Today we are talking about one specific moment, reportedly from Jimin, at the Toronto stop of the tour. The Toronto shows took place at Rogers Stadium in the 3rd week of August 2026, as part of the tour's North American leg, right after stops in places like Baltimore, Arlington, Foxborough, and East Rutherford. By this point in the tour, BTS has played to millions of fans across the continent, and Jimin specifically has built this reputation, this running theme throughout the tour, of noticing individual fans in a sea of thousands and doing something about it. We have seen it with surprise dance breaks. We have seen it with him stopping to acknowledge handmade signs. We have seen it with him going off script entirely to give one specific person a moment they are never going to forget. And according to what is circulating from the Toronto show, this might be one of the clearest examples of that pattern yet. Here is what is reportedly being described by people who were in the crowd. Somewhere in the audience, a fan was holding up a sign, and on that sign was one word, or close to it, filter. Now, if you do not know what that means yet, let me explain, because this is actually the emotional core of the entire story. Filter is one of Jimin's solo tracks, originally released years ago as part of BTS's larger body of work, and it has a specific reputation inside the fandom as one of his most sensual, most confident solo performances, built around this concept of literally removing filters, removing the mask, showing exactly who he is without any polish or pretense. It is one of those songs that longtime fans consider a defining Jimin moment, not because it was the biggest hit, but because of what it represents about him as a performer who is willing to be fully seen. So when a fan holds up a sign that just says filter in the middle of a stadium show for a set list that was not necessarily built around that song that night, that is not a random request. That is a fan telling Jimin, in the most direct way possible, this is the version of you that means something to me. And according to the post that has been circulating from that night, Jimin reportedly saw it. He reportedly looked directly at the sign, and instead of moving on to the next song on the set list like nothing happened, he reportedly stopped and started dancing and singing Filter, right there, specifically and visibly directed at that one fan. Now I want to be upfront with you here, because accuracy matters more to me than hype. As of recording this video, we do not have a full fan cam confirming every second of this from multiple angles the way we sometimes do with these tour moments. What we have right now is a post describing exactly the sequence of events, along with the kind of reaction from people who say they were there that makes it feel very real. In tours like this, especially recent stops like Toronto, full fan cam footage from different angles in the crowd tends to surface within a day or two after the show, once fans get home, sync their clips, and start uploading. So if this is one of those moments, and honestly, given Jimin's pattern throughout this entire tour, it would fit perfectly, we're likely going to see the actual video very soon. But even without full video confirmation yet, the account of what happened is detailed enough and consistent enough with what we have already seen from him on this tour that it is absolutely worth talking about right now, while it is fresh. Think about what that actually means for a second. This is a full stadium production. There is a set list. There is a rundown of songs planned down to the transition, choreography that has been rehearsed for months, a live band, in-ear cues, a lighting design that is built around specific songs happening at specific times. And in the middle of all of that, reportedly, Jimin looked into a crowd of tens of thousands of people, found one handwritten sign, understood exactly what it meant, and made the decision on the spot, in real time, to give that person what they were asking for. That is not something you can fake in front of that many witnesses. Either it happened the way people are describing it, or it did not. And if it did, that tells you something pretty remarkable about how connected this man is to his audience, even at the scale. Let's also talk for a second about why Filter specifically hits so hard as the song a fan would choose to hold up on a sign, because the choice of song here is not random at all. When Filter first came out, it was a turning point for how people talked about Jimin as a solo artist. Up until that point, a lot of his identity inside BTS had been shaped by this image of a gentle, soft, almost delicate member of the group. Filter flipped that completely. It was sharp, it was confident, it leaned into a kind of raw sensuality and self-assurance that a lot of fans had not seen from him quite that directly before. The lyrics themselves are about identity, about refusing to be boxed into one version of yourself, about showing up exactly as you are without softening it for anyone else's comfort. It became this signature moment in his live shows, one of those performances where even people who do not follow BTS closely would stop and say, "Wait, who is that?" So when a fan in Toronto reportedly held up a sign with that one word, they were not just requesting a song, they were essentially asking Jimin to show them that specific side of himself, the unfiltered, fully present version, and if the accounts are accurate, that is exactly what he reportedly gave them. And this is where I want to zoom out, because this is not an isolated story. This is part of a bigger pattern we have been tracking across this entire tour, and honestly, across Jimin's entire career. Go back to earlier stops on this tour, and you will see it again and again. There was a moment during a Make-A-Wish segment where he made a young fan's entire experience feel personal instead of scripted. There have been multiple stops where he has stopped choreography entirely to react to a sign, to point someone out, to make eye contact and hold it long enough that the entire section around that fan just loses it. There was a moment earlier in the European leg, during the Paris stop, where he ran directly into the barricade crowd, what fans call a crowd run, getting close enough to touch hands with people who paid to be in a pit that far from the stage. This is a guy who, even headlining stadiums with 6 other members who are just as famous as he is, keeps finding ways to make a show built for 70,000 people feel, for a few seconds, like it is just about one person. And if you are new to BTS and you are watching this thinking, okay, but is this just a one-off, isolated incident that a fan account exaggerated, I want to push back on that a little, gently, because when you look at the pattern across this tour specifically, Toronto included, it lines up with everything else we have documented. This is a performer whose entire artistic identity, especially through songs like Filter, has been built around vulnerability and presence. So a moment like this, a fan holding up the title of one of his most personal songs and him reportedly answering that call in real time, is not out of character. If anything, it is exactly in character. It is basically him doing, spontaneously, in front of a stadium, the same thing that song has always been about, dropping the performance, and just being real with the person in front of him. There is also a practical side to this that I think gets overlooked when people talk about moments like this, and it is worth pointing out if you are trying to understand just how difficult a move like this actually is to pull off live. A song like Filter is not something you can just casually slide into a set list on the spot without any consequences. There is a full live band on this tour. There are backing dancers with their own blocking and cues. There is a lighting and pyro design that is timed down to the second for whatever the planned song is supposed to be at that point in the show. For Jimin to reportedly stop, shift into Filter, and have the moment actually land the way it is being described, that takes either an extremely well-drilled team that can pivot instantly around him, or, and this is honestly just as likely given how tightly produced this tour has been, a level of trust between him and his live band and dancers that lets him make a call like that in real time and have everyone else adjust around him without missing a beat. Either way, that is not a small thing. That is the kind of moment that only really happens when a performer has enough command of their own show to bend it, even for 30 seconds, around one person in the crowd. Now let's talk about what happened after, because the reaction to the story, even without full video confirmation yet, has already started spreading fast across fan spaces. People who say they witnessed it describe the surrounding crowd reacting almost instantly, some fans in tears, some just stunned, because everyone around that one sign holder understood in real time what was happening. And once word started getting out beyond just the people physically there, the online reaction followed the same shape it always does with these Jimin moments. Fans immediately started asking each other if anyone caught it on camera. Clips started getting requested and shared in fan forums. People who were not even at the Toronto show started reacting to secondhand descriptions with the same kind of emotional response, because even hearing about it secondhand carries weight when it fits a pattern this consistent. That is genuinely part of what makes this tour different from previous ones. It is not just about the set list or the production value, which by every account has been massive. It is about these accumulating human moments that keep getting layered on top of the actual performances. And here is something worth sitting with for a second, especially if you are trying to understand why this fandom reacts the way it does to stories like this. This is a 29-year-old man who has spent more than a decade of his life on stages exactly like this one, who could very easily just run through the choreography, hit his marks, sing his parts, and move on to the next city. Nobody would blame him for that. That is what most performers at this level do, and it would still be an incredible show. But according to the accounts from Toronto, and consistent with what we have already documented across this entire tour, he keeps choosing not to do that. He keeps choosing to actually look at the crowd instead of past it. And when you multiply that choice across dozens of shows, hundreds of thousands of fans, that is not a coincidence anymore. That is a pattern that says something real about who this person is when the cameras are not necessarily even pointed at him specifically. So where does this leave us right now, as of when this video is going up? We have a detailed account from the Toronto stop of the ARIRANG World Tour describing Jimin noticing a fan sign referencing his solo track Filter and reportedly responding by singing and dancing that song, directed at that fan in the middle of a show. We do not yet have the full multi-angle fancam confirmation that we sometimes get with these moments, but given how quickly footage from this tour has been surfacing at every other stop, and given that the Toronto shows were still happening as of this recording, there is a very good chance clearer video evidence is going to emerge within the next day or two. When it does, if it lines up with what is being described, this is going to become one of the defining moments of the entire North American leg of this tour, right alongside some of the other viral instances we have covered from this run, like the crowd interactions in Paris, the surprise song moments in Baltimore, and the emotional Make-A-Wish segments earlier this leg. If this story resonates with you, if you're starting to understand why people who follow this group closely talk about Jimin the way they do, this is genuinely a great moment to jump into the rest of what is happening on this tour, because this is not a one-time thing. This is basically a weekly occurrence at this point, and we are covering every single one of them as they happen. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss it when the actual footage from this Toronto moment drops, because when it does, we are going to break it down in full, angle by angle, reaction by reaction. And while you are at it, drop a comment below and tell me what you think. Do you think this happened exactly the way it is being described? Have you seen anything close to this from Jimin before? And which other moment from this tour has hit you the hardest so far? I read every single comment on these videos, and honestly, some of the best context on these stories comes directly from people in the comments who were actually there or who know the deeper history behind these songs. It also helps to understand just how big the Toronto stop itself was within this leg of the tour, because that scale is part of what makes the story land the way it does. Rogers Stadium is not a small venue by any measure, and BTS booked multiple nights there as part of a North American run that had already included massive stops in Baltimore, Arlington, Foxborough, and East Rutherford in the weeks leading up to it. By the time they reached Toronto, this tour had already been building momentum for months, crossing Asia, Europe, and now North America, with reports of a tour approaching some of the biggest touring numbers of the year. That is the environment this moment reportedly happened in. Not a small club show, where an artist has room to freestyle and connect casually with everyone in the room, but a massive, tightly produced stadium production where every second usually has to count for the show as a whole. That is exactly why fans reacted the way they reportedly did in the crowd. In a show at that scale, being seen at all already feels rare. Being seen and responded to with the exact song you asked for, in front of everyone around you, is the kind of thing people who were there are going to be talking about for years, not just days. It is also worth noting how this fits into a wider trend we have been seeing from all the members throughout this tour, not just Jimin, even though he does seem to be at the center of an unusually high number of these viral crowd moments. Across stops on this tour, fans have documented members reacting to handmade signs, changing small parts of choreography to acknowledge specific sections of the crowd, and finding these little windows inside a massive show to make individual connections. It says something about where this group is at this point in their career. After years apart during military service, after finally getting back together for an album and a tour of this scale, there does seem to be a shared instinct among all 7 of them to not let the size of these shows create distance between them and the people who waited for them. Jimin's reported moment in Toronto is one of the clearest examples of that instinct in action, but it is part of a much bigger story about what this specific era of BTS has looked like on the road. One more thing before we wrap up, because I think it matters for understanding the bigger picture here. This tour is happening at a specific moment for BTS, right after years of individual military service, years of the group being apart, years of fans wondering what a reunion tour would even look like at this scale. Every single one of these personal moments, this Toronto story included, is happening against that backdrop. These are not just random acts of kindness from a famous person. They are happening in the context of a group and a fan base that spent years separated, finally getting this time back together, and by every account, choosing to spend it making sure the connection still feels real, even inside a stadium built for tens of thousands of strangers. That context is exactly why a moment like this lands the way it does. It is not really about one song or even one fan. It is about what it represents, that after everything, after the time apart, after the scale of what this tour has become, someone in that crowd could still hold up a sign and have Jimin actually see it and actually respond. I also want to say this clearly, because I think it is easy to get swept up in a story like this and lose sight of the fact that we are still waiting on full confirmation. Being a responsible source for you matters more to me than racking up views on a story that turns out to be exaggerated. So here is exactly where things stand as of right now. What we have is a detailed, specific account, matching the exact language and behavior pattern of things we have already confirmed with video evidence at other stops on this tour. What we do not have yet is the actual footage from inside Rogers Stadium showing every second of it play out. Those two things are different, and I think it is important for you as a viewer to walk away from this video understanding that distinction instead of just treating this as confirmed fact. What I can tell you with confidence is that if you have been following this tour with us, this fits. It fits the pattern from Paris. It fits the pattern from Baltimore. It fits everything we have seen from Jimin specifically across this entire run of shows. Whether or not this exact account turns out to be word for word accurate once footage surfaces, the underlying story it is telling about who Jimin has been on this tour is consistent with everything else we know. That is the story as it stands right now. As soon as clearer footage comes out of Toronto, whether it confirms every detail exactly as described or adds more context we do not have yet, we will be right back here breaking it down for you. If you want to be there when that happens, subscribe now, turn on notifications so you actually see it when it drops, and go ahead and like this video if you want to see more of these breakdowns, because that is genuinely what tells the algorithm to put this in front of more people who need to see it. Thank you for watching all the way through. I will see you in the next one.